Good morning to the board of iLearn. Today I will be briefing you on the loyalty, confidentiality and privacy owed to you from your employees and how to best protect yourself from a leak of any classified information. Basically, every employee that begins with a company begins with an implied duty of fidelity. A duty of fidelity is a duty to serve the company faithfully. It is enshrined within common law. It's obvious that the duty continues until the employment contract does. However, there are steps that can be taken once the employment ends to ensure that no harm comes to the company through the use of any confidential information. One protection that a duty of fidelity adds to the company is in regards to an employee starting a business while still employed. If an employee attempts to create a business while employed with the company, it will classify as a breach of the duty if it involves either soliciting the employer's clients, recruiting any other staff that work there, deliberately copying, removing, or memorizing any company information, or assisting a rival business that the employee tends to be working with. It should also be noted that the company is secure if an employee has multiple jobs. For instance, any skilled employees cannot moonlight for competitors within the relevant industry, as per Hivac v Park Royal Scientific Instruments. There are other tools that are at a company's disposal when it comes to protecting their confidential information from current employees. One example that is used in common law is the precedent pulled from Del Casel v Artidomus, where an employee may still be bound by duty of confidentiality after the employment contract is finished. Another tool a company can use is the doctrine of the breach of confidentiality, in which any person who gains access to any confidential information is obliged not to use or disclose the information without the consent of the company that created. The offender may have their actions restrained by injunction. However, according to Ansell Rubber v Allied Rubber, if the information has already been used, the offender will pay damages for loss of profits or any loss the company receives from the use of the classified information. For this precedent to be relevant, however, the confidential information must be a valued trade secret. So that means it can't be just day-to-day knowledge of the industry. And according to Day Studio v Bullet Creative, the company must have made sufficient attempts to keep the information secret. According to Commercial and Accounting Services v Cummins, physically removing or copying any client information before leaving will end in a breach, and damages will be paid, and the offender will be stripped of any gains made by the use of the confidential information. This also includes any staff as well as any information about company secrets. However, it should be noted that an employee's natural recollection is legal, as per Fessender Chicken v Fowler. Another way to go for the business is to use a post-employment restraint. A post-employment restraint is used on an employee and restricts them from certain use of confidential information after their employment contract is over. A restraint can specify that an employee cannot use confidential information outside of the employment contract. Although this adds little to the implied duty of confidentiality that already exists, for it to be worthwhile, I would recommend that the restraint go a bit further in imposing a commitment not to compete with any employers or work for a competitor for a defined period after termination of employment. Okay. Although the courts see this as valid, they will most likely enforce a more specific post-employment restraint. If the restraint is implemented before the employment has begun, then there is no issue. However, if it is implemented after the employee has already begun work, the company will need to offer consideration for the employee to make it valid, which is the same as any employment contract. The case that outlines this is Nickel Holdings v Marahaj. There is a way for a business to use a restraint without offering consideration. To do this, they have the option of using a formal deed. Instead of an employment restraint, this allows the restraint to be enforceable without the need for consideration. This was done in Electro Board Administration v. O'Brien. Should be noted, however, that the post-employment restraint is not limitless. It can only be valid if it is seen as reasonable. If not, the Competition and Consumer Act 2010 Section 51 will declare it invalid. For it to be reasonable, it has to satisfy two elements. The first element is that it has to have a legitimate interest in imposing restraint. So that means that the employee has access to confidential information beyond common knowledge of the industry, and has the ability to use the confidential information to the employer's detriment. It can also cover any communication between the employer's clients after the employment contract has finished. The second element is that the scope of the restraint must be no wider than is reasonably necessary to protect the interests of the company. This can include the duration, area, and nature of activities it seeks to control. It should be noted that the restraint can be too wide of scope if it is not limited to select area, and if the class of clients the employee was going after did not have sufficient contact with him during the employment. As seen in Commercial Plastics v. Vincent, it may also be too wide if the duration is too long. The time must be reasonable for an employer to protect its interests. So a post-employment restraint of, say, 10 years would be very unreasonable. It's been seen in other cases that even 1 year is unreasonable. Using the methods above, I feel that the company can rest easy knowing that there are plenty of common law and statutory provisions that can be used to protect the privacy of the company's information, as well as ensure loyalty from employees and keep safe any confidential information or products the company develops from any employee that wishes to leave the company while employed and after the employment contract has been terminated. Thank you.